welcome to Marriott MBA Today. I am Melanie Lopez, and I'm joined today with Jonah Barnes. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So Jonah Barnes is one of our second-year students, and he actually has some experience on the political campaign in the past, and he's had a good interest in politics since then. So tell me a little bit about this election. It's a big election. We have the incumbent President Obama, and we also have a BYU alumni, Governor Mitt Romney. So what do you see in this election as the big issues that they're facing, and how they might impact MBA students?
There's many issues that they're facing in the campaign, and they will choose which will resonate with the most voters in the most swing states. For BYU MBAs and business students in general, I think the most important issues would be taxation. Sequestration is approaching the fiscal cliff on January 1, 2013. I particularly, I'm taking a job in the aerospace industry with defense contracts. That's another position on which Barack Obama and Mitt Romney differ considerably as to where they're going to take defense. They want to scale it back, or they want to turn it up. And so that will affect the aerospace industry because we have defense contracts. So I think that there's no avoiding the impact of the election no matter where you go, but for some it's more and for some it's less.
And don't forget about Obamacare. That's
right.
That could change too.
Well, and that's, BYU has one of the best OBHR programs in the world. And I foresee Obamacare, or whatever replaces Obamacare. I think that no matter what, Obamacare needs to be reformed or replaced in order to function. So whatever happens with the healthcare industry, which constitutes 18% of the GDP, or our GDP, our OBHR students are going to have to deal a lot with this, with employer insurance coverage or non-coverage, and how the business will provide health insurance in the future or not. I think HR will have an interaction with that. I think that'll be a big part of their job going forward, their career. So depending on this election could be the fate of Obamacare, and the fate of Obamacare could have a great influence on the careers of HR students in particular.
Right. So when we graduate in the spring, I mean, we could have a new president, or we could have Obama's healthcare plan that the HR students especially will have to deal with.
Yes. Yeah. And like I said, with the aerospace industry is just one example, but many manufacturing industries particularly are kind of the backbone of the U.S. economy, and depending on how the economy goes, so goes the manufacturing industry. With aerospace, Obama wants to scale back defense spending to where we're dropping finance professors on our enemies because they're cheaper and crueler. But the Romney administration would increase defense spending on the opposite, so they go very different ways. So yeah, Obamacare, taxation, and the defense spending with sequestration.
Tell me a little bit more about taxation. So
okay.
For me, if I'm going out to Silicon Valley, all of a sudden, my income is in a different tax bracket. How is this election going to impact my tax?
Well, probably the biggest impact on your taxation, and for most MBAs, will be, I think, geography. I think will be one of the biggest things. State taxes will differ a considerable amount. But the fiscal cliff that's approaching in January 2013 has the expiration of the Bush-era tax cuts in place. The Bush-era tax cuts have been in place for 12, 13 years now. Right. Bringing down capital gains corporate tax rates would then be reversed. It would come back up when we hit January 1. And so that's going to have an effect. If of course, the jury's still out on whether or not either candidate can prevent the fiscal cliff from hitting us. Mitt Romney proposes a tax plan that will have us, powering energy in our homes by lighting cigarettes made from $100 bills, and his tax plan is to get rid of deductions, which is something that could affect the more successful, like you, Melanie, who will end up making millions and millions of dollars in your life. He wants to put an individual cap on deductions. And so depending on, if you put a windmill on top of your yacht, you can't then deduct that as being an alternative energy source, as a portable wind farm or something like that. He's going to get rid of a lot of those corporate tax loopholes and deductions, cap deductions from any spenders. Now that will affect business students in the future, depending on what kind of deductions they're going to pursue. And because BYU MBA students are the most successful business students in the world going forward, they'll surely hit those caps. So that's another part of Mitt Romney's tax plan that might not be the favorite of corporations or successful business persons in the future.
Okay. So do you have any idea on or any guesses on who might win this year? I mean,
well, the
incumbents are pretty hard to beat.
They are. The Republican Party hasn't unseated an incumbent in 100 years with the exception of Jimmy Carter. The grand unified theory of politics dictates that everybody is an expert on politics until they're wrong. And so everybody has their guess on who is going to win. I think that if business students are interested in watching how the election plays out, they should tune in. They need to be aware that Pennsylvania, which polls will close earlier than others, Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, the polls are going to close earlier. So if early in the night on Tuesday, November 6th, you see Florida going one way or the other, Virginia, North Carolina, those are the ones to watch to see which way the election goes. I particularly think that it is very, very close, and that I think that the BYU alumni is in a great position, and he's performing fabulously well against an incumbent president who won by such a sweeping margin in 2008. And regardless of how his eventual win or loss, I think it's done amazing things for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I think for the BYU brand, in particular, I think the Marriott brand. I mean, Mitt Romney's name is Willard, named after J. Willard Marriott. So, I think
his father.
Yeah, I think that it does. I think that it does have an impact, regardless of how it goes. But it'll be interesting to see what happens election night.
Yeah, come next week. Yeah. So. One other thing, right now there's some natural disasters going on. There's a Hurricane Sandy hitting the eastern seaboard.
Yes.
Do you think this will impact the election?
Yes, everybody's speculating on whether or not this will impact the election, and I know the answer. They're all wrong, but I'm going to tell you. No, the election adversely affected mostly states that are not swing states. New Jersey was hardest hit, New York, those states are not swing states.
Okay.
But they may depress the overall popular turnout. People don't feel like going to vote when they're still chainsawing a tree that fell down on half their house, or pulling the witch out from under the house that the house fell on. So they don't feel like going to vote. So that might depress the popular vote in some of those non-swing states, which will affect the popular vote. But in terms of the Electoral College, Pennsylvania and Ohio, which are very important to the election, were also adversely affected. It gives the sitting president, Barack Obama, a chance to look very presidential. That's a great thing for him.
Yes.
However, I think that it delays the news cycle. You lose almost a week of your news cycle. It was election 24/7. And then all of a sudden a hurricane hits.
Right, all the debates and everything, and then all of a sudden the attention turns.
Yes, and things freeze. And so for 3 or 4 or 5 days, you have these people who were tuned into the election all of a sudden tuning out, and all they're hearing about is the hurricane. When they tune back in on Monday, it may have frozen their opinions where they were a week ago, which I think would be beneficial to the challenger, Mitt Romney. But, as soon as it's over, everyone's going to say, I knew it.
Thank you so much for
welcome.
coming on our show and giving us some perspective for MBA students today.
Sure.
And thank you for watching Marriott MBA Today.